Well, welcome to the Moral and Ethical Leadership Podcast hosted by the BYU Management Society Salt Lake Chapter. I'm Dave Austin.
And I'm Kurt Frankum.
And we hope you're all safe and healthy during this difficult time. We've been doing this podcast for about a year with our monthly luncheon speakers, and due to the crisis that we're currently in, we want to change it up a little bit. We're starting a new guest series called Voices of Light.
We know there's a lot of people suffering out there right now, whether it's physically, emotionally, or economically. And our hope is to bring you guests who can uplift, inspire, and have honest conversations with us. We plan to have these interviews on a regular basis, and hopefully this can help us all get through this together.
And we're so grateful to have with us today filmmaker, cinematographer, and director T.C. Christensen, best known for his cinematography on The Work and the Glory, and directing 17 Miracles and Ephraim's Rescue. TC, welcome, and thank you for being with us.
Wait, so I'm an example of light? We got a problem already.
we didn't tell you it was called Voices of Light, I guess, huh?
Oh, no, glad to be here, you guys.
TC, I have to say that while you have some big films out there, the one that you're most well known for in our house is Out of the Mouths of Babes.
Woo! Thanks. Nobody brings that up anymore. You know, it's only 40 years old, and I love that you even know what it is.
Oh, I love it. It's so great. 1981, right?
That's when it was released. Yeah, I'd only been out of college just a little bit and got that idea to do that, and it's very fun, rewarding to me that it's still out there, and some people, not very many, even still know what it is.
Well, TC, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you're doing through all this COVID craziness.
I'm sick of it. I'm ready to make a movie, and I can't make a movie. I don't know. It's like, and have you heard this one about, I've washed my hands so many times that the answers to my 8th grade math tests are starting to appear on my hands. I'm just ready to move on. I have a movie that I would have been filming right now, and it's all postponed. I can't do it until things get better. But anyway, it actually is not too bad of a life. It's making me lazier. I'm eating way more potato chips, if that's possible, than I normally eat, and playing a lot of pickleball and some tennis and seeing my kids and the grandkids, whatever. It is what it is. It's all good.
Nice. And I'm just curious, TC, there's obviously a shift in your industry and what's happening. We keep getting disappointed when we hear certain, movie release dates are pushed back, or, productions are altered, or whatever it is. And so how do you see this impacting your industry going forward? Anything dramatic that way?
Yeah, nobody knows really where it's going to end up with the effect on the theaters. I depend with my movies on the theaters for a good run to kick off our release, and to get people, not only the box office, but it gets people seeing it and talking about it and advertising and marketing. And theaters have been limping along. Several of them have opened on a smaller basis. I don't know when that's going to change and if it's going to come back like it did. The push seems to all be towards streaming. And streaming is great, but it's not filling the gap left by theatrical box office, and also DVD, because DVD's just gone, through the last 5 years or so also. Anyway, so it's really an up in the air industry, and I'm just kind of hanging on by the fingernails, hoping that we'll still be able to make it all work.
TC, what makes a great movie to you?
I'll tell you in one word: story. That's what I care about, and that's what whether you know it or not, I think that's what most people care about. You can take I don't care how good your production is, if you don't have a good story, a good script, you're never going to make a great film. And the opposite is true. If you have a really good story, I think people will forgive production mistakes, some acting that's not up to par and so forth, but because they get caught up in the story. So I put a lot of effort with my projects into finding and choosing something that I think will motivate people and create an event, not just entertainment, but something that sticks with them. That's the goal. And not that I've always accomplished that, but that's really where I put a major part of my emphasis.
And along the same lines of stories, we have a lot of professionals, many business owners that listen to the BYU Management Society podcast. And if there sometimes you feel like, well, my story isn't really remarkable. Is it, as far as like business and telling stories? Any advice you'd have on people in the professional world as far as the role of stories, or do we just wait till your movie comes out?
Well, I'm not sure what you're saying in terms of the story of individual people, what they should.
Yeah, whether it's a story of a business or drawing people towards an organization according to their story and
How do you tell a great story?
Well, there are ways that things that happen in a story that we try to make sure are in there. They're kind of tried and true things. Well, let me just tell you, for an example, there's a principle in storytelling and of course in movies called save the cat. And that means that if you want the audience to like your protagonist, very often what we'll do is somewhere in the beginning of the film, we have a scene where the protagonist saves the cat. He does something that's kind of magnanimous, not expected, but he goes and helps the poor person or something, or gives some money to do something that makes you go, oh, this is a good person. I like that person. In terms of your people, I'm not sure if this is at all where we're going, but I'm going to go this way.
Sure.
I think people need, no matter what you're doing, you got to be journal writers. People that write down what good experiences have happened to them, and miracles and positive things, that they will write them down. That's how I got 17 Miracles. That's how I got Ephraim's Rescue. It's because of journals. If they wouldn't have done that, and at the time, I can tell you, those pioneers were not thinking, oh, the whole world's going to want to know about this at some point. They were thinking probably like we do, that it's just our life. And yeah, we have some ups and downs, but whatever. And I'm so thankful that many of them took the time, usually after it was over, because pencils and paper and that stuff was not abundant on those kind of treks. But later in their lives, they had their experiences written down, and each of you should do that too. Oh, wow, great. That was good. Did you record that? I hope you got that part.
You nailed it.
That was awesome.
That's what I think.
I love it. TC, there's been a lot of church films that have been made over the years. I'm just curious, what do you see your role in, or do you feel like you have a role, and what do you see that as?
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I'll tell you a few things that have shaped me with that is, you guys, you may know who Pete Seeger was. Was kind of a political activist and an artist. And Pete Seeger's, he's who wrote If I Had a Hammer and Where Have All the Flowers Gone? Anyway, he said the key to the future is finding the positive stories and letting them be told. I love that quote, that he just felt like we've got to have positive stories in our life. And I decided early on that I think filmmaking can be powerful, affect people's lives and the way they feel about different things. And So if I was going to be involved with it, I just wanted to come down on the good side of it. There's plenty of people that are making shows that, I don't know, you kind of don't feel as good when you've watched it, or feel like you've been dragged through the mud or whatever. And I just decided early on I wanted to be on the uplifting side. My hero in filmmaking is Frank Capra. Anybody know who Frank Capra is?
I've heard the name.
Heard the name.
Well,
It's a Wonderful Life, right?
oh, that's very good.
My mother would be so proud.
And I am too. That's the film he's mostly known for. But Frank Capra made films over and over that were about just the little person who realize if they stick to their guns, they can make a difference in society if they do what's right and, don't get persuaded otherwise. And Frank Capra had a lot of great things to say. One of them was that he wanted to make films that did two things. One, that they exalt the worth of the individual. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good goal, Frank. And the second thing is he was worried about the rise of atheism. This is I think he wrote this in like 1946 or something. Back then, he was concerned about the rise of atheism. I think we should be concerned about it now. I'm sure it was like this with him, and with us, it's gone like that. And so he made films that tried to, through a very good, well-crafted story, convince an audience that they had worth and that there was a God, that there is a God. So Frank Capra, because of those things, became my hero early on. I have to tell you, right within a month of getting home from being a missionary, I had a film class, and I was told, this is October of 1974, was told we have a special guest coming to campus. His name's Frank Capra. And we watched one of his movies in the Joseph Smith Auditorium. And when it was over, and it was very touching to me. It's a Wonderful Life. I think it was Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. But when it was over, and here he is, and Frank Capra came running down the aisle, and it was like, he's won 3 Oscars for best directing. Was entrenched in the Hollywood system. He's made these great films, and I just saw one, and here he is. And that incident, that moment in my life really affected me and made me want to be like Frank Capra.
That's powerful. And I'm trying to find what the question is here, but let me maybe just get your perspective along those lines, that sometimes in this world we live in of media and movies, a lot of streaming is happening, and, Netflix or whatever it is, there'll be a lot of excitement maybe around a certain series or movie, whatever it is. And sometimes I find myself, going to these, watching them, but then it ends and there's like no redemptive value to it, right? Maybe the bad guy wins, and the writing, the twists and turns are intriguing. But then it just ends with no redemptive value. And I think that's what you're alluding to with Frank Capra, and maybe a lot of what I see in your movies is not only is it a great story, but there's such a redemptive value to it. Any thoughts on, is that a trend that people in your industry are seeing? Is it becoming more of a thing to sort of, do those darker movies, or take out the redemptive value of productions?
Oh, I think that's been a trend for quite a while. When the motion picture code kind of collapsed in the 60s, and filmmakers could do a little bit more of whatever they wanted, there was I think, a rise in that, anti-hero films, where you make a film about a person who really is not the kind of person I don't think society should be all zippity about. But I do think you're noticing streaming, it's that edgy content.
Yeah.
that it's more pushed toward. And you know, they they make some terrific shows like that that have great stories. But I think a thing that most of us as members of the church have to come to grips with is, even if it has a good ending and a good moral, how much mud are we willing to be dragged through
Mm.
when we get to the end of the film that it's worth it?
Yeah.
And that's an individual thing. I think some people can shrug that off a little more, and others are a little more sensitive to it or whatever. But I think it's important for people to realize that there is the more you see degrading things, ungodly things, I think it has an effect on you. You become acclimated to it, and it's what was at first shocking becomes, yeah, nothing to it. Yeah, that's just human nature. That's the way it goes, and it's better for us to try to keep our sights set a little higher and not get exposed to too much of that.
That's awesome. That was gonna be my question as well, is that, we have so many different, what would be your recommendation to what kinds of things we should watch as members of the church and not partake of, and you answered that beautifully. TC, this is the Moral and Ethical Leadership Podcast. What suggestions do you have for everybody listening on how to be a moral and ethical leader in today's world?
Oh, be like me. That's my message to you all. Just look at my and I don't know that, you guys. It's not like I don't know all the answers and all of that. You know, do what you're supposed to. Get out of bed in the morning. Read your scriptures. Say your prayers. Do what's right. It's all the primary answers. It really is. You just keep treading along on the path, and when things get in your way, you just got to keep going and push through it. And
Yeah.
then at some point you turn around and realize, hey, I'm an old fat bald guy, and I'm about at the end of my life. I hope I've lived a good life.
Nice. Well, TC, one thing I've really appreciated about your films is because in the, in the I don't know, the segment or the category of Christian religious films that tell stories. Sometimes they're maybe not they're maybe fictional stories, but they sort of try and generate miracles and force certain feelings on you, and it kind of seems cheesy at times. But you've done a great job with really keeping a story real without feeling like the director really wants you to feel the spirit right now, so feel it. And what any I don't know if that's something you've seen. Maybe my my armchair quarterback watching movies is just creating that. But is it I'm curious if you're by staying and focusing on real stories, and all of your films that come to my mom seem to be based on true stories. Is that how you avoid that, or any thoughts around that?
Well, that I appreciate your insights into that. I have made really only true stories, and that right on its surface, I think takes away too much of an audience being able to go, oh, wow, that's crazy. Oh boy, they're really,
Yeah.
pulling my leg on that one. Because I have to change maybe a few little things, and you write some dialogue because you don't know what was really said and those kind of things, but they're true stories. And so it's kind of, you put it out there and say, hey, I didn't make this up. This is what happened. You draw your own conclusions, take what you think out of it. I get asked commonly about, well, I have made mostly LDS films, type films, and why don't I try to make something broader into the bigger audience? And I actually have done a little bit of that. But here's the design for me. I find the best story that I can and then make that. And it just happens. I think in our culture, we have the best stories. I find I read a lot and I'm looking for stories, and I find this and that. And the ones that jump out at me have been the ones that are part of our culture. And I'd make no apologies for that. Whatever, I'm fine with that. Wow, I think I took off on that there, but whatever. That's the answer you got anyway, Dave.
No, that's great. That's really helpful.
That's a great answer. I'm just going to read this quote. It's one of my favorite quotes from President Hinckley. He says, "We stand today as the recipients of the pioneers' great effort. I hope we are thankful. I hope we carry in our hearts a deep sense of gratitude for all that they have done for us. With so great inheritance, we can do no less than our very best. Those who have gone before expect this of us." And I just want to thank you, TC, for both being on our podcast and also for telling these great stories. That was those words were going through my head as I watched 17 Miracles. So thank you so much.
Well, I'm not dead yet. I'm hoping that these bugs go away, and I'm going to come up with some other ones. I have a new one, the one that I would be doing now. I'm very excited about it. I think it fills all of those kind of ideas that you're talking about. It's really a terrific story.
Thank you, TC. We can't wait. We're so grateful for you and grateful for all of our listeners. We'll be back again next week with another episode of Voices of Light. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.